Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing the Jane Austen July Book Tag. Now this book tag was made by Marissa from Blatantly Bookish. I first saw it on Megan the Story Girl's channel, so I will link both of their channels down below, but they are both excellent people, and I'm very excited to finally do this tag. Question number one is, of course, what is your favorite Jane Austen book? And it is so hard to pick a favorite, as any Janeite will know. But I have to say that I think my two favorites are Pride and Prejudice and Emma. I love their wit, I love the drama, they are my ultimate comfort reads, and they are both utterly quotable. Who is your favorite Jane Austen protagonist? For me, I identify with a lot of different aspects of most of her heroines. I identify with Eleanor's reserve, with Elizabeth's irreverence and hasty judgment. I identify with Fanny's shyness and observance. It depends what situation I'm in, who I feel more like. Number 4 asks me to name a book off my shelves that I think Jane Austen would wholeheartedly approve of. This is split for me. I think she would approve of E.M. Forster, specifically either A Room with a View or A Passage to India. E.M. Forster did nick her free indirect discourse style, so she may not approve of that quite as much. But I think she would definitely approve of Lucy's struggles and the decisions she has to make while growing up in A Room with a View. And I think she would really love the social commentary in A Passage to India. I also think she would have approved of Elizabeth Gaskell, specifically North and South, again for the social commentary, but also for the personal growth that each of the main characters have to go through, which is very trademark Jane Austen. I'll come back to that thought in a moment. First though, question number 4 asks, what is a book off your shelves that you think Jane Austen would have hated and why? And this was a bit of a struggle, but ultimately I landed on the Game of Thrones series by George R.R. Martin. I think much as Jane Austen enjoyed a good Gothic novel from time to time, I think that Martin's style is far too heavy-handed and male-centric for Austen. And indeed, as shocking as some of those Gothic novels were, I think the graphic detail of both the sex and the violence in A Game of Thrones would have had Austen running for the hills. I quite enjoy them though. Question number 5, who is your favorite minor character in a Jane Austen book? And I have to say this is a twofold. I love the Crofts and the Gardners from Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice, respectively. And I love them because they are two examples of good marriages in Jane Austen. Supportive, caring, understated, everything that I hope my future marriage will ultimately be. And having examples of good marriages among the adults is rather rare for Jane Austen, honestly. I really love whenever those two couples show up. Number 6, name a book off your shelves that you feel was somehow inspired by Jane Austen's work. And here I told you I'd come back to it. It's North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Whenever I have to describe this to people who are not familiar with it, I always describe it as if Jane Austen and Charles Dickens met. It's Pride and Prejudice, but far grittier, with a lot more social commentary and industrialism of the Victorian age, and looking at the downsides of that and what the lower classes were going through as well. I also feel quite strongly that Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was definitely influenced by Jane Austen's work, specifically her style of writing. The slight edge and the unexpected and understated humor are definitely things that Susanna Clarke stole from Jane Austen as she crafted this fantasy story set in the Regency era. She didn't have to include that, but she did. And I think that definitely shows her nod to Jane Austen. And lastly, which Jane Austen character do you simply love to hate? Of course, I love to hate Mrs. Elton from Emma and Mrs. Norris from Mansfield Park. They are classic examples, I think, of Austen's worst villains. They are selfish, they are rude, they are insensitive, everything that by rights we should hate, and yet they are so enjoyable to read about in a very perverse way. However, I also have to give a nod to Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and this is going to sound horrible, but Lady Catherine de Bourgh has always reminded me of my paternal grandmother. And that is why I love Austen, is that even her quote-unquote villains are utterly real. As I sat there watching the 95 Pride and Prejudice at 16 or 17, as Lady Catherine was busy bandying about her words of advice and that her way is the only correct way to do things, topped off with her line of, "What are you talking of over there? I must have my share in the conversation." I turned to my mother and said, "Oh my God, it's Grandma." And that proves my point, that even her worst characters are utterly real, and that is why we love to hate them, because we know that there are people out there, and we may know some of them, who behave exactly that way. So there you have it. Those are my answers to the Jane Austen July tag. I don't have anyone specific to tag. Anyone that I would think to tag has already done this tag. So if you have not done this tag either, please go feel free and do it, and please leave me a comment down below so I can check out your video afterwards. Until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.